How to do the cable cast on. We will start with a slip knot, and I'm sorry to say that I have noticed in my classes that people don't know how to make a slip knot, so I will start by showing you how to make a slip knot. This is how you make a knot. If I pulled it tight, I would make a knot almost impossible to pull out. A slip knot doesn't have the tail of the yarn going through it, so let me return the tail of the yarn. Now I can pull it as tight as I want, but it slips out when I want. So again, you start by making a knot, put the tail back, there is your slip knot. You know it's a slip knot because it pulls out. So when you get good at doing this, you start making your knot and just don't pull it through all the way. There is a slip knot. This will be your first and temporary stitch for your cable cast on. Pulls out. And leave a little tail. Eventually, when you make your first hat, or when you make anything, you're going to need a tail to work in. So don't be stingy with your tail. Okay, there is a slip knot. Put it on your needle and pull it tight. Now put that needle in your left hand and tuck the tail out of the way. Don't pull it so tight you can't get into it. This is the first stitch of cable cast on, and it's temporary. Don't get too attached to it. For the second stitch, I will have to enter it as if I'm going to knit. Now, here is the one time when I say it's really good to hold the yarn in the right hand. Take the yarn in your right hand, and I like to make a ring over my middle finger. Wrap around the needle as if you're going to knit, and now pull through a loop. You can make it as big as you want, put it on the needle, and now pull the loop closed. Not too tight. Notice I'm putting my thumb there to keep the stitch from being pulled too tight. Now, the first stitch was a slip knot. The second stitch was entered as if to knit. The third stitch and all the remaining stitches are done like this. Put the needle, the right needle, between the two stitches. Take the yarn in your right hand, wrap around the needle as if to knit, and now pull up your loop. Put it directly on the needle. Do not twist it one way. Do not twist it the other way. Put it directly on the needle, and again pull it. When you go to pull it firmly but not tight. Move your thumb over to give yourself space to get in for the next stitch. Between the stitches, wrap around the yarn, pull it through, put it on the needle. As you get better at this, you'll notice that you can keep the yarn in your right hand and you just get a little seesaw motion. I'm holding it so I can just put it through, pull it. The trick to doing this easily is not to pull the yarn tight. If I pull the yarn tight, how would I ever get in there for the next stitch? So, as you make each stitch and you put it on your needle, move your thumb to give yourself space. Keep it loose. Now, if you think it's too loose and if you're insecure, pull it tight after you get your needle in, if you must. The point of doing cable cast on is to keep your knitting under control. I have found that when using long tail cast on, it's very easy to make the knitting too tight. Do the cable cast on and you will find you have control of how tight it is, and you'll keep it not sloppily loose, but loose enough to work with. This is the reason it's called cable cast on. It looks like a cabled rope. Alright, so you'll cast on as many stitches as you need, say for your hat, and you'll go all the way around the needle with your stitches. Here we are with all our stitches on. Now there are two things we have to do before we can start our knitting. First of all, put on 2 more stitches than you need, because remember those first 2 stitches? Well, they're not nearly as nice as the rest of them, so let's get rid of them. Take them off the needle, and if you did them correctly, they will pull right out, also giving you a sufficient tail to work in later. The last stitch, which you put on the needle, well, look how nice it looks, except for that last stitch. Just doesn't look good there. So here's the trick with the last stitch of cable cast on. Before putting it on the needle, bring the yarn forward, then put it on the needle. And then we have a nice, beautiful cable cast on from one end to the other. We are now ready to join our knitting in the round. So we're going to hold on to our needle with the working yarn in the right hand. Put the tip of the needle in the right hand. Now put the tip of the other needle also in the right hand. Starting at the right, point all the stitches all the stitches, point them all to the ceiling, making sure that they're not twisted. And as you can see here, these stitches were having a good time getting themselves all twisted. You must untwist it before jumping across the gap. Okay. Okay, now, checking once more, starting at the right, we're looking at all our stitches, and sure enough, nobody's twisted. So now we can continue with our knitting right into the first stitch. Now pull that stitch tight, and of course the looseness, you can just pull up your first stitch. Now, you might think that you're in the clear now because you have joined in the round without twisting, but you're not. You have to check once more when you get to the end of the first round. When you come back to this point, we have to check ourselves again. Near the end of our first round. When we get to the very end, we have to stop and make sure we are not twisted, because even though you made sure you weren't twisted to start, sometimes, somehow it gets twisted. So here is, we're ready to jump across and start our second round. We are going to stop and check ourselves. Hold the right needle in your right hand and also the tip of the left needle. Again, starting at the right, check the yarn and make sure you're not twisted. Okay, we are not twisted, we can proceed. But let me show you what would have happened if you were twisted. It does happen. So now you hold both needles in your right hand by the tips, starting on the right, point all your stitches to the ceiling, and sure enough, there's our twist. You can simply untwist it by moving the yarn over the needle because you have only one strand. Once you jump across now, you are safe forever. It will not get twisted. So you must always check it, make sure you're not twisted, and then keep going once you're not. Now, here's the tail I spoke of. Later, you will thread that with a blunt needle and you will join it to your beginning, and you'll make a very nice join where you started your knitting. That's why you needed a little bit of a tail when you started. Okay, that's your cable cast on. Happy knitting.